The Shanghai Cooperation Organization, or SCO, is set to hold its largest ever meeting on Sunday and Monday in the Chinese city of Tianjin at a time when geopolitical and trade tensions are simmering. The group consists of 10 nations, mainly in the Eurasia region. Most notably, there's China, Russia, India, Pakistan, as well as Iran. It was founded in 2001 with a goal of enhancing regional security and stability. Now, fast forward more than 2 decades, it's now positioned to become the region's counterweight to Western influence and stability. Membership accounts for an estimated 42% of the world's population and around a quarter of global GDP. Now, more than 20 heads of state are expected at this year's event in Tianjin, including representation from Southeast Asian countries like Malaysia, Indonesia, and Vietnam. And with such a high-profile attendance list, analysts say it could offer a platform for Beijing to boost its diplomatic clout, with the gathering set against the backdrop of wars and conflicts challenging the global order. Now, it comes just 2 weeks after the Trump-Putin summit, in Alaska, yielded little breakthrough towards ending the war in Ukraine. European leaders converge at the White House soon after in a show of support for Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, but that too left more questions than answers. Now, Beijing has called for a peaceful resolution to the war, but Mr. Zelensky has ruled out China as a security guarantor. China has also hailed Pakistan as a most reliable partner amid border tensions with India, which escalated after deadly clashes in Kashmir. China, too, is locked in a decades-long border dispute with India. But there's been a recent thaw in relations as Trump tariffs trigger an unexpected resetting of global alliances. The Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi is making his first visit to China in 7 years to attend the summit. Last week, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi visited New Delhi to lay the groundwork for a meeting between Mr. Modi and President Xi Jinping. He stressed the need to view each other as partners rather than adversaries. Well, China last hosted the summit in 2018 at the height of the trade war during President Trump's first term at the White House. Now, this time, the group is expected to sign an agreement that will map their long-term strategy and balance all members' interests, whether shared or conflicting. So for more, we're joined now by Drew Thompson, his senior fellow at the S. Rajaratnam School of International Studies at the Nanyang Technological University. Drew, good to have you back on the show. It's been a while. I want to talk to you about all these reports about Xi Jinping's plan to expand, to build on the SCO, to counter the West. Can it actually work? I mean, we have 24, leaders who are going to be there, and these are leaders who are often at odds with each other.
So I wouldn't characterize the SCO as a counter to the West. It was originally set up to manage competition between Russia and China in the post-Soviet space of Central Asia. And it was really an effort for Beijing to increase its diplomacy and diplomatic channels with all of those newly established states following the dissolution of the Soviet Union. So in that respect, it's been quite effective for China to build relations with these new states. It was never designed as a counter to the West in particular. Mm-hmm. It's certainly expanded, but there's a lot of distrust between those members. I mean, despite the handshakes and the facade, the China-Russia relationship is complicated despite a lot of parallel interests. You've got, certainly within the SCO, Uzbekistan and Tajikistan and
all the stands.
And Kazakhstan, they have border disputes of their own to resolve, yep. and the SCO is really designed for that. So it's not a counter to the West, mm-hmm. but I think its expansion in the last couple of years, and certainly you've got numbers of observers, and you've recently had the Gulf states now become observer members or partner members as well. That indicates that there's growing support for a more multilateral, global, multipolar world order. Okay. And we certainly have seen the expansion of the BRICS take place at the same time, yep. which demonstrates that this is really supported by the Global South.
So my question then is, what is this, I guess, expanded SCO going to be like? Is it going to be a combination of the SCO and BRICS?
Well, the BRICS has expanded quite dramatically to include Africa and the Middle East. So I don't think I would compare the two necessarily. But certainly there's a big trend where there's concern about over-reliance on any one major partner. And that's, I think, the nature of multipolarity. I mean, just as Russia doesn't want to be totally dependent on India, so they also benefit from multipolarity, the other countries are not as comfortable dealing with the United States or Europe. And we've seen growing protectionist trends in both of the major economies of Europe and the United States. So it's giving them alternatives, but it certainly isn't a block. I don't think there's a common agenda to oppose and counter the West. It's really part of an alternative that also includes the West in many of these countries' economic and security strategies.
Okay. So, Drew, one of the most notable attendees is Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, his first visit to China in 7 years. His presence in China, what does it tell you? Is it really a genuine thaw in relations, or is it largely optics to pressure Washington?
Well, I think what we will see come out of the SCO summit is going to be a lot of optics. It's going to be a lot of a facade of smiles and friendly handshakes and family photos, and I think that's positive. Yeah. But there's also, as I said, a lot of distrust. I mean, Modi has a lot of good reasons to go. He didn't go last year. To the Astana summit. There's reasons for him to go and pursue India's interests, to maybe patch up relations with China. Obviously, Pakistan is there, and we've just seen a conflict emerge, and we've seen China support India's opponents and adversaries. So I think India is going to be looking at pursuing their interests towards getting a strong statement in the joint declaration against terrorism. And of course, Pakistan diplomats will be there with their pens in hand to try to water that down and make sure they're not singled out. So you also have, of course, a deteriorating relationship between India and the United States that's probably a factor in their mind as well. And Russia. I mean, India has a mutually beneficial relationship with Russia, and Russia doesn't want to become overly dependent on China. So that's very useful for them, too. So there's a lot going on here. And in many ways, it's not about the West.
Okay, I do want to ask you about this love triangle. It is a love triangle. You have China, you have India, and obviously you have Russia. Right now, Russia wants a close embrace with China. China's saying, okay, but not too close. You know, we don't want to be seen as supporting you in the war in Ukraine. China more open to a closer relationship with India. It sees it possibly as an opportunity given the tensions with the United States for both countries. So how do you see all this kind of playing out, you know, at the summit, and what do you think is going to be the end result?
Well, love triangles are messy.
They are, yes.
And I'm not sure I would use love as an analogy here. There's common interests. Yep. Those interests don't always align. They're not always neat. So as I said, they want options. And I think one of the big challenges they have is you need options in order to hedge effectively. So, I mean, the U.S. is a factor here, too. So maybe there's another partner in this. I mean, Modi's relationship with Trump is one thing, but the economic relationship between New Delhi and Washington is currently under strain. Now, that might be an incentive for Modi to go to Beijing, but that's not really a good alternative for him, too. I mean, for one thing, he's lost the leverage of having a U.S. economic partner, which means Xi Jinping has zero incentive to make concessions to India. And those are two very much opposing economies. They're not complementary. They both have Make in India and Made in China competing with one another. So it's going to be very difficult to see a positive economic outcome for India and China, particularly when he doesn't have the alternative. So you need options to hedge effectively. And what we're seeing is a lot of hedging behavior between all of them. Russia's an important one. I mean, Russia-India relationship is pretty stable, but the Russia-China relationship is dynamic. And, you know, we thought it didn't have limits, but now it seems like it does. Yeah. And remember, you know, if you look at the long history trend, Russia was always the dominant power, right? Russia was the dominant power and part of the century of humiliation. I mean, the Russians sent troops into Peking in 1900, right? So this is now a major reversal. This is the changes unseen in a century, too, where China is now much more dominant and Russia's dependent on India. So Putin has to manage that, too, which makes India presence there very useful to Putin too. So it's a dance, and they're all going to dance well. And I think it's positive. There's not much negative coming out of it because I don't think it's a counter. It's really an alternative.
Okay. How do you think Washington will be watching this? And Mr. Trump, he repeatedly threatened countries with more tariffs if they align with what he calls anti-American policies. Do you think he will double down to assert control, or at least sort of back off and soften his stance?
So, I mean, Washington's always struggled to focus on parts of the world beyond Northeast Asia. Right. China, Japan, Korea, the U.S. allies, that's really always dominated Washington's attention. So I don't think there's ever been much focus on Central Asia in particular. And Southeast Asia, of course, also struggles to remain high on Washington's agenda. It's a bit of a boutique issue. So I'm not sure that there's going to be any concern about these developments, but it is definitely an indication that there's growing support in the global South for alternatives to dependence on the US and on Europe. And I think that's something that Washington should be watching, right? They may not have as much leverage and as much hard power as they think they do. And I think President Trump would probably do well to think about the effect that his threats have on people. It's not a great way to build trust. It might generate outcomes for him politically and for the American economy, but it's not great for long-term, stable, trusting relationships. And I think he's going to have to modify that if he wants to develop those.
So Drew, I'm glad you brought the U.S. up because there's a parade coming up on Wednesday, Victory Parade, that Beijing will be having. There are going to be a number of leaders there, including the North Korean leader and President Putin. Now, these are people that Trump, not just wants to meet. He's met them and he takes pride in being, a deal maker. But is this a signal from President Xi Jinping? I got these people, they're coming, telling Trump, in essence, you can't do deals, in this part of the region, particularly without me, without China. Is that the message, you think, as well?
If that's an attempted message, I don't think that's what's going to be received in Washington. I mean, I think when you look at the leaders on that rostrum, you're definitely going to see an alternative world order. And it's definitely not one that Washington wants to see. But, I mean, I think that parade on September 3rd is really going to be about President Xi signaling his own people and his own constituents. I mean, he very much wants to show Putin and Kim up on the stage with him to demonstrate his control of the army, the party, the government. It's really about signaling their strength to the people of China. And I think that's primarily what the parade does. Remember, this is a parade. It's not a demonstration of military capability or their ability to coerce other countries. It's very formulaic, and it's a bit performative, like a parade should be. So it's not necessarily going to deter anybody from challenging China when it suits their interest.
Okay. Drew, we have to leave it there. Thank you very much for coming on the show. Look forward to talking to you again soon.
My pleasure.
We've been talking to Drew Thompson. He's Senior Fellow at the S. Rajaratnam School of International Studies at the Nanyang Technological University.